I have made hundreds of thousands of dollars running webinars for my clients. This video is going to give you the exact system I use to run webinars that actually convert. And not some thrown together random value and pitch at the end. I'm talking about the actual operating system, from how we pick topics to how we structure the script, to the promotion timeline, to what happens after the webinar ends that most people completely ignore. Now, I built this into a full SOP that I use within my own agency, and today I'm gonna walk you through this entire thing. Now, before we get into it, if you want the SOP, link in the description in the free community, but let's jump straight into it. So we have run a handful of webinars for our clients. Just to show you guys the real results, these are some screenshot of dashboards of some webinars that we have run. We have run 50K webinars. We have run webinars with smaller clients that we did about 30K with last year. We even did $150,000 in the first 4 days of a webinar that attributed to one of our $2 million launches that we did last year. And the way most people usually run webinars is just completely wrong. They throw together some slides, they talk for an hour, they throw a pitch at the end, send a couple emails and an SMS. They're not intentional with any of their promotions or the presentation itself. And then they wonder why nobody's buying. And it's not because webinars don't work, it's because they're running them with zero structure and zero intention behind the scenes. So what I'm about to show you is the difference between a webinar that does $5,000 and a webinar that does 6+ figures, right? And it all comes down to the system behind it. And where most people mess up is they don't actually know who they're selling to. They're teaching too much and converting too little, and they're not being intentional with literally everything. They have no effective pre-webinar nurture system, no effective post-webinar follow-up, and no actual proven system to run high converting webinars, right? And so of course, today we're going to show you the system that actually works. Okay, I broke it down into 6 different sections that all play into each other. And I'm gonna give you the real sauce here. Like a lot of people try to hold back, bro. I'm gonna give you the real stuff that I actually use within my own business. So the first thing that you have to do for a webinar, before anything, is find your ICP. Okay, gather all the data that you have, from Typeform responses to sales call recordings to any touch point of data from your audience that you or your client has, right? So go back and find the old Typeform applications, go back and find the old sales call recordings, literally, quite literally any data that you have, any data that you can get your hands on, go find it, gather it all into a pool. And then what you're gonna do with this, to find your actual ICP, so you don't have to sit there and kind of just read through the whole thing yourself, take all that data from the Typeform responses, from the recordings, from the touch points. But what you're gonna do, open a ChatGPT, open a Claude. Claude works really well. And then take this AI prompt right here, prompt your AI with this, upload the past Typeform responses, sales call recording transcripts, any touch point of data from your audience with this prompt, and it will spit out a full ICP breakdown, right? And we're not just talking, answering a couple questions like, oh, what are they like? How old are they? Where are they from? We're talking about real ideal customer profile breakdowns here. This prompt is simply going to prompt the AI with giving us certain details on their avatar, their core problems, which is extremely crucial when it comes to creating your webinar topics, which we'll get into, their deep desires, their fear, their buying psychology, extremely important, failed solutions, how they talk, literally the language they use on a day-to-day basis, their awareness level, their offer positioning, and then just an overall summary of this. Right now, you can either pause the video here or you can join the free community down below. I have this whole SOP here with this exact prompt. But once you prompt that, it's going to spit out an exact ICP breakdown. Okay, that is the first step to creating webinars that actually convert, so you can then go into the next step of creating topics. Right now, most people, when creating topics, they just like to they just go off their brain. They just go off, okay, what do I want to cover in this webinar? You have to have a full ICP breakdown so you can make webinar topics that pay attention to their top 3 pain points and their top 3 goals. And from there, you will structure your webinar topic. Okay, now these are going to be broken down into 2 different sections, right? You're gonna have your main topic, and then you're gonna have your subtopics. Your main topic is more so your headline, kind of what's on your landing pages, how you're marketing it. And your subtopics is pretty much just what you're gonna cover within that class. Okay, so now that you have your first piece, which is your ICP breakdown, you're going to go into your second piece of creating your topics. Now with the main topic, you can follow this framework, kind of topic name, how-to mechanism to desired outcome. For example, master the path to consistent profits, how to use the, and then this is where I'll get a little creative with the naming, strategy to become consistently profitable in the markets within X amount of time, right? An example for a main topic is that, right? And then below that, of course, you will have a subheadline that adds specificity or emotional weight, okay? And then when it comes to your subtopics, since you have that ICP breakdown, each pillar equals one core concept tied to one of the ICP's biggest problems. Okay, and again, this goes back to your ICP. What are their biggest problems, right? Not just what you want to cover, what are their actual biggest problems, right? It's almost like a USP. It's a naming strategy that should pique curiosity and hit pain point and desire. Okay, and then once you have that stuff, you can kind of make what I like to call a webinar game plan, right? You have your webinar date, your webinar main topic that we created up here, and then your webinar subtopics, which you should format it like this, right? So you have your subtopic pillar 1, naming like this, and then you will have your bullet points below that subtopic, which is just going to be actual things that you will cover. So now instead of just throwing up some webinar promotions, throwing out a random funnel, getting signups, you now have your exact ICP breakdown, and you have an actual game plan for your webinar. You have your topics, you have your subtopics, and you're doing it in the correct way to where you're not going to just throw up random topics and hope people sign up. That's the big thing with topics. If you don't create the right topics, you are not going to attract the right amount of people, right? If you create niche topics, if you create narrow topics, it's only going to attract a narrow amount of people. But if you create wide topics that specifically address certain pain points and certain things within a big audience, it's going to widen the horizon and higher your chances of getting a lot of webinar registrants, right? So once you have that, once you have the first two pieces of knowing who you're actually selling to, and then creating the topics behind the breakdown that you just made, you are going to move into your promotion cycle and funnel. Now, something that's extremely important when it comes to running these high converting webinars is preparation. Your results will always fall back to the way you prepared and the preparation you had. And if you don't prepare correctly, you might still do good, but you're going to shoot yourself in the foot because you're not going to do as good as you should have. So with the promotion cycle, a lot of people just, like I said, throw up random promos, hope it's going to work, and hope it converts. Again, wrong way to do it. Not only do you have to create promos that are directly related to your ICP breakdown and what your topics are, but you also have to plan ahead of when you're going to promote what, right? And by that, I mean, you're gonna have a mix of promotions leveraging every platform, right? And then you're also gonna have nurturing, okay? And a lot of people really overlook the nurturing period, because if you don't have a nurture period from the point where the person signs up to the point where the webinar starts, not only is it going to lower your show rate, but it's going to lower the chance that they actually convert. Okay, so starting off with promotions, what you are going to want to do, you should write out every single promo tool that you have, meaning Instagram, Discord, email, SMS, whatever it may be, write all of them out. Okay, and let's say, for example, you are running this webinar and you're starting the promos 1 week out, right? That's pretty typical. That's a good promotion cycle, something good to follow. On day 1, since you have your pre-planned topics and everything is created correctly, you are going to have full stack promos. So you're just going to leverage every single tool that you have, every single promotion platform that you have. And this is where attention to detail is crucial, because you don't want to spam too much, but you also don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and not get enough information. Okay, so day 1, start off with leveraging every platform you have. Okay, day 2, go into some of the smaller channels, like maybe the Discord or something that's not as direct response as an Instagram story per se. Day 3, you can do another round of full stack promos, except this time leave out the SMS because SMS gets super spammy. Day 4, back to the small channels, the things that are a little bit less direct response, Discord, Telegram, community, whatever it may be. Day 5, back into the full stack promos. Day 6, you can run another full stack promos, and the reason you can do back-to-back full stack promos is simply because it's getting closer to the webinar day, and you want to make sure that you are leveraging everything that you can. Just leave out the SMS again because that gets very spammy. And then leading into the last 24 hours before the webinar, you're going to have 2 days of full stack promos going into it. Right, and so the thing to pay attention to here is just a variation between promos, right? Because like I said, you don't want to spam Instagram stories every single day because people are just going to get sick of it. Get creative here. Run your Instagram promos, run your community promos, run your SMS, run your emails, post reels, plug in YouTube descriptions. Get creative here. Just make sure that you have this all mapped out before you start promoting. Okay, and then now for the most important part, the thing that most people overlook is the nurturing. Okay, and this isn't just reminder emails, this is actual nurture emails and SMS to heighten show rate and to increase conversions. Okay, so on the first day that you start promoting, it's really just going to be confirmation email, right? Just people signing up and getting their confirmation emails. The next day, you're going to start off with your nurture sequence. So you're going to have nurture email number 1, and this is actively giving value. It's not just saying, hey, thanks for signing up, webinars next week in 6 days at this time. No, it's actually giving them real value based back to the point of your ICP data and the topics that you have created, right? It all plays into each other as you're seeing, right? And then day 3, you can let it breathe for a second. This is another portion where you don't want to spam too much to where it'll not only be overwhelming, but it will also hurt your open rate. Okay, day 4, run into your next nurture email again, giving value, pre-handling objections, breaking limiting beliefs, warming them up to the offer and to the webinar, and overall increasing show rate. Okay, which moves into the next day of the next nurture email. Again, in this one, you're going to want to do a lot of pre-handling objections, warming them up to the offer. Then you're going to run into day 6 nurture email number 4, which is 48 hours before. Now this will be sent exactly 48 hours before the class starts. Can act as sort of a reminder, but also something else I like to do in this one is give them an incentive to stay till the end of the class, right? Whether that be a free gift, a giveaway, or just something kind of bland that you can open up to them to get them intrigued and stay till the end, right? And then you're going to run into day 7 nurture email number 5, which is 24 hours before. This one is more geared towards a little bit of a reminder email, but you're still dropping value, you're still giving game. And then you're going to run into your reminder emails number 6, 7, and 8 morning before or day of webinar, which you are going to send the morning of, 2 hours before, and when it starts. Along with that, you will have SMS sent out morning of, 1 hour before, when it starts, and then 10 minutes after it starts. Okay, but the goal of the nurture emails and the nurture sequence is to do 4 things. Okay, it's to break limiting beliefs, it's to pre-handle objections, it's to showcase social proof, and then it's going to be to show what's possible, to showcase the lifestyle, and to overall warm them up to the offer, warm them up to the creator, and heighten the show rate to the max potential. Okay, and along with that, I'll give you a quick breakdown of the registration funnel. This is relatively simple. You don't have to overcomplicate this, right? With the registration funnel, you don't have to do too much, but you want to have a couple specific things that will really convert well. All right, now when it comes to the main page, you're going to have your main topic, your headline, which you made here based on the ICP breakdown. Again, this all plays into each other. You're going to have a countdown and some sort of CTA button, right? That would go to a pop-up to sign up. You're going to have your subtopic pillar breakdowns, right? So really just what you're going to cover in the class, along with another CTA button. You're going to have a quick presenter description. This one's optional, right? This would just be whoever's presenting the class, quick description over them, some social proof, whatever it may be, along with another CTA button. And then you can have event details at the end, right? So this is like when the webinar starts, where it's going to be hosted, and how many spots are open, right? For example, right? Having that scarcity there to drive even more signups, having that CTA button as well. And then once they sign up, what's going to happen is, one, they're going to send to the post-registration page, giving them their next steps, having the attention-grabbing headline, post-registration video, having the confirmation steps like check their email, join a community if that's what you want to do. I recommend getting them all in one place, like a Telegram, for example, as well as adding the event to their calendar, which is crucial, having any other details that you need there, and then having some social proof as well. But as they're signing up, there's also going to be, and this is where the operations come in on the back end, confirmation email sent, confirmation text, inputted/updated in the CRM. This is for future reference for your sales team and just overall to track your lead journey. They are inputted into this prior nurture flow. And like I mentioned, I also suggest you direct everybody to one place, that being a Telegram, a Discord, a broadcast channel, whatever it may be, just somewhere that's extremely direct response that you can directly market and sell to them. And now that you have your exact ICP, your exact topics, your funnel, you've prepped your promos, you have everything in place, that's when you can move into creating the webinar itself. This brings me into the webinar structure that actually converts. Now, like I said, some people just overteach, some people underteach, and some people just have no structure in general, and they really shoot themselves in the foot, right? Because you might think the way you're going about it right now, it's converting, it's getting sales if you've run webinars in the past, but you'd be surprised as to the more stuff you can do to actually hire the conversions. Right now that you've done all the steps to actually get people to show up, how are you gonna actually sell them into the program? Okay, that's what I'm gonna cover here. So I broke it down into 6 sections. You'll have your hook and intro, you'll have your authority and story portion, you'll have a quick objection handle, highlight quick, you'll have the 3 to 4 teaching pillars, which is the education section, you'll have your transition into the pitch, which is extremely important, and then you'll have the pitch itself. Now, these first 3 are more so of the intro, this one is the education, and these 2 are more so of the pitch, right? You can kind of separate the transition and the pitch. But breaking it down, starting off with your hook in your intro. This is extremely important because just like a VSL, just like any other marketing thing that you may do, the hook is extremely important. It catches attention, it gets people to stay. Okay, that's the goal here. The goal here is to get people to stay till the end of the class, pique their curiosity, pique their attention, and have them paying attention while you're teaching. Okay, so open with a result, a bold claim, or a pattern interrupt, something that earns attention within the first 30 seconds. Okay, establish credibility fast. Who are you? Why should they listen? Keep it tight, keep it quick. After that, you can preview the agenda, like here's what we're covering tonight, list the pillars, right? So a quick agenda overview, say, here's what you're gonna learn tonight. Okay, sometimes clarity can have somebody confused, which will lead them to leave the class because they're not attentive. And then you're gonna set the stakes. This is where you can have your giveaway, have your specific thing that you're gonna give to them at the end of the class, saying if you stay till the end, you'll walk away with X, right? That can be a specific outcome, that can be a giveaway, that can be a free thing, whatever it may be, just something to get them to stay. Okay, an extra incentive, right? And then you can also end off this section with a quick engagement cue, which you'll have to sprinkle out throughout the webinar. But an engagement cue is pretty much just, for example, type in the chat where you're joining from, something to get people engaged, right? Where they're actually typing in the chat, they're engaging and interacting with the webinar itself. That really helps with retention, which will then move you on into the next section of authority and story, right? So you or the client's transformation story, where you started, what was hard, what changed, where are you now, and what got you there, aka what the webinar is covering, right? Highlight on that, because everybody has a journey, everybody has a unique journey at that, and there are specific things that got them to where they are today, and that can relate to what you're teaching within the class. Okay, and as you're telling your story, this will build the relationship with the audience. This will establish credibility within you or your client. This will overall make them know you, because if they know, like, and trust you, they will want to buy from you. Okay, after that, you can move into a quick objection handle section 3, right? This is just to break off any limiting beliefs. This is to pre-handle a couple objections so they don't go into the education portion with these objections in mind, right? Before you teach, address just a few fears and doubts, name them out loud. Like, I know some of you are thinking, I've tried things before and they didn't work. I want to try alone, or I can do this alone, but try to make these about learning, right? Save the money, time, fear, and all the other objections for the end. Make these ones specifically about, for example, I can do this alone. I can find all this stuff on YouTube. I've tried things before and they didn't work. Stuff like that. So they go into the education with an open mind, because if they don't go with an open mind, they're going to be closed off, and it's going to be very hard to sell to them, especially when it comes to the things that are going to go on within the education section that will pre-sell them. Okay, now moving on to arguably the most important part, the teaching pillars, right? The education section. Right now, a lot of people have 3 pillars. You can have 4 if needed. I would suggest 3, keep it simple. Now within those pillars, you're going to do a multitude of things, right? I have them listed out here. You're going to name the problem clearly using their language that goes back to what's the ICP breakdown that you have. Again, it all plays into each other. Explain why they have this problem, right? Not the symptom, but the root cause. Introduce the framework or the shift or the system that solves it. This is where you're going to really teach. You're going to give enough to create an aha moment, but not so much they feel they can do it alone. That's a big thing here. You don't want to give them so much value to where they're like, oh, I have all my questions answered, I can go do this now alone, right? That's over teaching, right? You want to give them just enough to where they have that moment of like, oh shit, this is how it works, but not so much to where they feel like they have all the answers they will ever need. And then you're going to incorporate social proof. Like, one of our students' name was dealing with this exact thing. Here's what happened when they applied this, right? The framework, right? And this part is optional, but you can bridge to the program. This is what we go much deeper on inside whatever the program name is. But the big secret here is tying in social proof using the pillar and sprinkling in some indirect objection handling, right? If you execute this within your pillars correctly, I promise you, it will make a big change in the conversions that you see from your webinar. A lot of people miss this, right? They don't tie social proof into what they're teaching, and they don't pre-handle objection, right? Within your pillars, you can literally incorporate social proof, like we said right here, to pretty much prove that what we're teaching works, right? And you can also sprinkle in some indirect objection handling using student stories or using stories from you or your client that will continue to wipe those objections and limiting beliefs out of their mind, out of the prospect's mind, and pre-sell them before we even pitch. Okay. Now, as you're doing this, now you will then do this for each of the pillars that you have that, again, I keep saying this goes back to the ICP breakdown that you have. But after you have all those 4 pillars intact, based off real data, based off real ICP breakdown data, you will move into the transition. Now, this is critical. Nailing the transition is crucial. It has to be smooth. It has to be clean. It has to be well represented. Okay, this should be the bridge from the education portion to the pitch portion, and it must feel natural. It can't feel forced. It has to feel natural. Okay, you have to create the gap. For example, now you understand the framework, but understanding and implementing are 2 different things. You can also present them 2 routes they can take, like, oh, you can take the route of going about it by yourself, continuing to fail, yada, yada, or you can take the route like XYZ student did that I showed you back in the presentation and get the implementation, the help that you need to expedite the process to fast track your success to XYZ, right? Desired situation, right? But the transition here, you just dropped all the value for them. You just pre-handled their objections. You just sprinkled in social proof. Now, how are you going to tie in the solution, right? This is saying after all of that, now this is what you need. I just gave you some value. I just gave you the answers. But now you have all these questions. But now you need this. Now you need that. How are you going to solve that? You're going to solve that through the pitch, through this program, right? Now, of course, the pitch is crucial, but I can't lie, without a good transition, your pitch is gonna fail. And this is where you don't need to overcomplicate it, okay? Follow this quick series of events, right? After transitioning, you're going to introduce the solution, right? Again, with the transition, you're like, oh, you have all this now, but you don't have this. How are you gonna get this? You're gonna get this, through the solution. That's where you introduce the solution. You're going to showcase some social proof after that. So just student result, student result, student result. We've even literally brought on students to the webinar before, like shown their face on there and they talked for a second and then got out of there, but really just nailed down the social proof here. And then you get into your program breakdown, AKA value stacking, showing all the deliverables. I usually go pillar by pillar. The same way we break down pillars of education here, I like to break down pillars of the program so it's easier to digest. And that's extremely important here, because you don't want to say like, oh, this program does this, 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 and this, and this, and this, and this, and this, because then they're not going to remember anything, right? So after breaking down the whole program within those pillars, you do a quick offer recap. And the reason here is because you have to remember that the people watching this webinar, they're going to remember the last thing that you said the most. Okay, so whatever you said last with the offer, that's what they're going to remember the most. Okay. Now, obviously not every single person, but that's a general rule of thumb that you can follow. Okay, and after that, you're going to have scarcity and a tie down. By this, I mean showing like, X spots left. You can have a tie down of giving them the 2 routes like you did within the transition. And then you are going to transition into your first CTA, saying, oh, link is in chat. You're going to pause the chat, drop the link in there, have everybody going. And then of course it doesn't end there. It doesn't end at the first CTA drop. You're going to move into some objection handling, some social proof, some tie downs, right? So this is breaking those objections of fear, of time, of money, of think about it, whatever it may be, sprinkling in some social proof within that objection, saying like, oh, this student thought the same thing, but he did the X, Y, and Z that now caused him ABC result, right? Having another little tie down in there the same way you did up here, and then moving into your second and final CTA, which will take you into the Q&A section. Okay, and by now there should be a bunch of people coming through, a bunch of people applying. The reason you have these 2 CTAs spread apart is the first CTA, it gets all the people that are ready to go. Then you'll have your fence sitters, some people who need a little bit more information, some people who need to be pushed across the line. That's where you'll get them within this section. Move to your second CTA, have your Q&A and the link sitting in chat so you can get your last couple applicants and your last couple booked calls, or your last couple sales if you're doing direct to checkout, whatever it may be. Right now, if you follow this structure for the webinar structure that actually converts, within your presentation, you should be able to hook people. You should be able to build the authority, wipe out their objections, teach them. Again, not giving them the answer to every single question, but giving them just enough to where they have those extra questions, to where you then transition it, saying you have this, but now you need this. Obviously not literally saying that, and then introducing the solution, going into the pitch, having your CTAs, objection handling, your second CTA, and your Q&A. Okay, now this is where most people stop, right? They stop here, they think, oh, webinar done, webinar over. No, nah. Okay, so the next section, your post-webinar flow. If you want to stop here, go ahead, by all means, you can. But you're gonna miss out on a good amount of sales simply because you don't have an effective post-webinar flow. Okay, your follow-ups and everything is crucial. Even if it's outreach, even if it's your setters, everything is crucial within this, okay? Follow-ups are crucial. So to start you off, the day after the webinar, I usually like to do this through email sequences. And then of course our setters reaching out to attendees and people who signed up. But you're going to have your day 1 recap plus missed opportunity plus CTA with a replay link, okay? This is going to give them another opportunity to apply or book a call or pay for whatever thing it was you were selling, along with a replay link if they want to go watch the class again for any fence sitters. Moving on, you have your day 2 post webinar, putting in your social proof, putting in a results story with a CTA, this time just an application link. Day 3, I usually let this day breathe so we're not spamming. Again, you kind of have to, sometimes it's better to tone it down a notch instead of doing too much. Day 4 post webinar, you will have your objection specific email, right? Or the #1 reason people don't apply, right? And also scarcity for the one-time offer made on the webinar. Okay, and just giving that extra touch of scarcity, extra touch of urgency to get any last minute fence sitters, which brings me to the last day of the post webinar follow-up, giving them the final chance CTA to apply, the deadline, the scarcity, and all that good stuff, right? And then of course they will move into a long-term follow-up, receiving newsletter emails, receiving sales team follow-up, receiving future SMS promos. Because the really important part here, bro, and this is where a lot of people really don't collect the cash they should, because they don't understand the concept of once they enter your system, they're not going to leave until they either close, and even then they won't fully leave because you have upsells, cross sells, whatever it may be, or they tell you to fuck off, right? any other time. You need to have your follow-ups in place, bro, because you're gonna be missing out on a lot of cash if you don't. So after you have your post-webinar sequence in place, you can move into reviewing your webinar, which is arguably the most important part, right? A lot of people try to run things, but they don't have effective processes for looking at data, reviewing what they could have done better, just overall improving. A lot of people forget to be students of the game, and so they really hold themselves back. So success metrics that you need to track, things such as total registrants, show up rate, average watch time, total applications qualified and DQ'd, application completion rate, calls booked, which are self-booked and setter booked, calls taken, close rate, cash collected within 7 days, objection frequency, setter pickup rate with registrants, attendees, and then also your funnel conversion rates. How many registered to how many showed? How many showed to how many applied? How many applied to how many actually booked a call? How many calls are booked to how many calls taken, aka show rate? How many calls taken to close? How many registrants to cash collected? Which almost means when one person registers, how much cash is that technically collecting? All right, a cool metric to have. But like I said, something a lot of people don't have is these success metrics so they can continuously improve and iterate. Now, after that, you should be printing off freaking webinars. You have your full ICP breakdown based on real data so you know exactly who you're selling to. You have the topics created in a certain way to attract a wide range of people and specifically address their problems. You have your promotion cycle and your funnel pre-planned so you're not running behind schedule and you're actually getting as many registrants as possible and also ensuring you have a high show rate and heightening the chances that they convert. You have a webinar structure that's actually going to convert the prospect. Now that you've gotten people to show up, how are you going to convert them? That's how you do this. Once the webinar is over, how are you going to continuously generate sales and make sure you take full advantage of the work that you just put in? And then finally, what could you have done better? Now, of course, there's more that goes into a webinar, but this structure should get you more clarity and overall more results. If you want an even more in-depth breakdown with real life examples, with more in-depth explanations, I have a free community down below with the full webinar SOP for free, for completely free. You can join that down below. And if you are a growth operator, I have a call booking link down below to see if working one-on-one with me to scale your agency is something that would work for you. Other than that, go run a webinar, stop overthinking it. You have the system, now go use it. I'll see you in the next one.